Okay.
All right. All right. So I'll first introduce myself, I guess, before we get into everything. My name's Kayla Heller, and I'm an elementary education major at Kutztown, which I know that you kind of know because you talked to Dr. G, I believe.
Yes. Every once in a while,
Um, and this is just for my class that is based on teaching ELLs. And I'm hoping to interview you to get an idea of your role in the school that you work at and get a better idea of my role in the future.
okay.
So first I just wanted to know your name, your background, and kind of like your language experience.
Okay. So my name is John Kosmetsky. This is my 24th year of teaching. It's actually only my second year of teaching the ELLs. I started in Reading School District, and I worked there for 16 years. And while I was there, we had a very large ELL population there. And at the time, there was a shortage of ELL teachers. So the federal government put out a program to try and get some more teachers, and they offered free courses. They actually gave us a stipend of $1,000 too, so that was nice. And I had a group of friends that wanted to do this, and I thought, all right, I'll tag along just to try and get some extra courses, and anything that we do in ELL benefits all of the students, whether they're regular or ELL. So I thought, all right, I'll do this as a classroom teacher, and it should be able to benefit everybody in my room. Never thinking that I would actually get an ELL job. Um, I then left Reading and I went to the Governor Mifflin School District. Again, just a regular classroom teacher. And I saw that there was an opportunity as at Antietam as to be an ELL teacher. And I interviewed, and here we sit.
All right. And then you kind of covered it, but like if you want to talk more, what made you decide to like go into the field of ELL teaching
So
and teaching?
when I worked in Reading, I absolutely fell in love with getting to know some of the parents and the families that we worked with. And when they would come in for conferences, we would talk about their child, obviously, but then they would start telling us backgrounds about how they either immigrated to America or how they were born and raised in America, but spoke a different language, and how difficult it was for them to, try and assimilate with the rest of the population. And that just like that it pulled at my heart first off, because I was like, oh my gosh, we want everybody in education to receive the same education. And then I just thought, how can I possibly help? And that's where the courses all popped in. And again, the rest is just history then.
So next, I kind of want to know a little bit more about the students that you work with right now, the kind of population that you serve. So things like language, maybe like SES status, stuff like that.
Okay. Right now on my caseload, I have 49 students from kindergarten to third grade. We are predominantly a lower socioeconomic status school. And I want to say almost all of my students either have a background from Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Mexico. We have some students from El Salvador and Colombia. And within the past month, we just received a student from Yemen who speaks Arabic. So all the other students, obviously hailing from the Spanish-speaking countries, speak Spanish. So she comes in speaking Arabic, and she has very minimal English language already. So that's been a help, but it's also been a little bit of a struggle because, you know, when the kids are all te or they're all speaking Spanish together with each other, they can kind of help each other out. With nobody speaking Arabic, it does get a little bit difficult, but there's ways around that, things that we work in the classroom with.
All right. So I wanted to know also with we talked about the languages of your students. What kind of language does your school use to describe ELLs? Do they use that term? Do they use other terms?
So it varies.
Yeah.
Honestly, like it just depends on who you're talking to. I call my students the ESL students.
Hmm.
But then there's some people who are like, no, that's the bad word. You can't say English as a second language. Some of the students might be learning their third or fourth language at this time. So EL, ELL, and ESL are kind of what we use in the school.
All right. And then what does the community that surrounds the school look like, such as like the community outreach that your school does, like how involved parents are?
I would say our parents are slightly involved. If there's a family reading night or if we put on a math night or something fun like that, the parents will show up. But on like just a strictly volunteer status, we really don't get too many parents that are saying, "Hey, I have some free time or some extra time." Um, but when they do come into the school for those fun activities, they are very, very involved with our kids.
Right. And then one last like general background question that I had for you is what your routine looks like on a day to day. I know that's a broad question, but if there's like a any way you could answer it.
It's I'll be honest, it's like a lot of controlled chaos. Like I have a morning duty that I have to start off with in the morning when the kids come in, making sure that they're not running into the school. But that's where I get to greet most of the students, and I see almost every single one of the kids that I work with. My day starts at 8:30. I have between 9 to 11 groups that I'll meet throughout a day. I pull them all into my classroom. There's actually only two that I do push into. But when the kids are ready to come into my classroom, I go to their room and pick them up first. And then as we're walking back to my room, that's where we kind of get our small talk out of the way. And, this way I'm not interrupting any education that we're going to do inside of the classroom. But once the kids come in, they know get right to the seats. We always start off with practicing either vowel sounds or working on some sight words as like a quick warm up. And then each week I just have a different set of skills that I'm teaching the kids, and they just progressively build off of each other. So we'll start a new unit working with the vocabulary words, moving our way into phonics. That phonics and vocabulary words then goes into the reading selection that we're going to do, and then that turns into writing. And in that writing, then I throw a lot of different kind of grammar in. Sorry, my mom's calling me right now. Um, but that's kind of how I structure each group um, when I'm meeting them. I try and keep the routine the same for the kindergartners and the third graders so that as they're just slowly moving through each grade level, there's nothing new that they have to know. They can just pop in and we can get started right away.
That's a good point. That's what I was going to ask, like what like how it differs. But I think that that makes a lot of sense to have familiarity, I guess.
I do a lot, like if I'm working with vocabulary words, I'll work with kindergarten, teach them basically the same way that I would teach third graders. But then when it comes to practicing or different activities or when I'm
Hmm.
assessing them, that's where things, obviously
Yeah.
change a little bit.
All right. So I guess how does your overall goals, like your learning target type things, um, differ when you teach like ELLs and ELLs at different like levels of understanding, I guess?
So when I'm creating my groups, That's one of the main things that I look at. I'm trying to look at their previous WIDA score. Have you heard of the WIDA scores? Okay. We are a WIDA school. So I look at their previous year's WIDA scores and try and match them up to the same levels when I'm pulling them. This way, I'm not having somebody at a level one working with a level four. Those are two totally different things. Um, I'm sorry, I kind of got off on a tangent there and I forgot your question. Could you tell me that one
Oh,
again?
no problem. I just asked how the learning targets that you set for students differ.
So then based off of those WIDA scores in those groups, then I'm looking at the WIDA framework that they have. It's like a 400-page document, and it basically breaks down, um, if this is where your student is, here's what we want you to do to try and push them up to the next level. So I'm constantly referring back to that. And right now, I forget what the actual term is because they just changed a lot of things. But some of the learning outcomes that they have become a little bit like the language has become a little bit more simple, so that I can read that to the kids. I can even show that to them and say, "Here's where you are. Here's where I need you to get to, and here's how we're going to work on that."
Thank you. That's very helpful, actually. And then also, I wanted to know kind of what you kind of already went over it. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to share about how an average lesson looks, how like instruction looks. I know you kind of already went over the framework of that.
It's really fun. I was in a classroom for 22 years and I taught first to fourth grade. And when you're making your plans, you're kind of set in stone in those plans when you're a classroom teacher. But when you're teaching ELL, like one day, like whatever you plan one day and then you have planned for the next day, they might be two totally different things based off of how the kids respond from that day's lesson. So kindergarten is a perfect example. Like yesterday, I wanted to teach them about adjectives, and we just worked on colors, sizes, and shape words. So I had 12 words on strips of paper that I wanted them to cut out, and then we were going to sort them. And I'm thinking, okay, we can easily get these 12 words done. No problem. We'll move on to the next day's plan, which was like, we were almost going to do like a Mad Lib kind of thing and make some silly sentences. And then Wednesday's lesson plan is to take those silly sentences and illustrate them. But all that got blown up because out of those 12 words, we only got 4 words sorted because the kids it was a new concept for them. They're still learning how to read. So I guess like each day, like you really can't like make a set stone lesson plan that you're going to follow because it's kind of a fluid situation each day.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm like not a very natural interviewer, so
You're doing a great job.
um I was wondering also
Listen,
how
it's totally good. Like we're so good at talking to kids, but then when you have to talk to adult, you're like, oh
I
my
know.
gosh, what do I do? It's fine. You're doing great.
I was wondering what models you use for instruction. I've kind of heard a little bit about like structured immersion or sheltered, etc. So I'm wondering what models you might use. Do you know what
Mm,
I'm talking about?
not really, no.
That's okay, because then we'll just scratch that
Okay.
and I'll go to the next thing because I want to know more about like what you do.
Yeah, sure.
So, how does the this is probably a good question to ask you specifically. How does the instruction of ELLs vary from the instruction of native English speakers in like a general ed classroom?
Okay. Um, so first and foremost, I have to slow everything down. Um, when I like 2 years ago as a fourth grade regular ed teacher, I specifically taught science and spelling, and I could whip through lessons, not overthinking what words I'm trying to use, not spending too much time on those academic vocabulary words, kind of assuming that the kids had a good background. With this, I, I I'm breaking everything down to the smallest step that I can possibly break down and constantly asking the kids, do you have any questions? Can you, like, whatever we just learned here, can you explain that to me or can you explain it to a partner? And then your partner's going to tell me what you said, kind of thing, so that I know what kind of learning is going on there. When it comes to kindergarten, I think about kindergarten constantly because they are a totally different beast. But when I think about kindergarten, this week we were working on different types of food words like rice, pizza, salad, soup, and a couple of others. And then we also talked about family members and how I have to, have them do some translanguaging in their head from abuela to grandma and things like that. And then how can you use the family vocabulary words with the food vocabulary words using some other words that I've taught you in the past. And I sit there with the kids and they'll try to say their sentence like, mom rice makes for dinner every night. And I'm like, that's wonderful. Let's just switch some of those words around. So with kindergarten, I have to do things like that. Third grade's where I'm kind of taking it to the next level, and we're really focusing on those academic words, focused on making sure that we have evidence. Like right now, I'm preparing some of them for the PSSAs that are coming up. So let's make sure we're reading stories and we're taking notes and we're finding evidence. And it just comes down to also just asking them constantly, are you understanding? Do you have any questions? And that all comes from building a great relationship with them in the beginning of the year, making them feel safe to make mistakes, making them feel safe to ask questions, and then, making sure everybody in the classroom understands if we make mistakes or if somebody misspeaks or something happens, first off, it stays here in the classroom. And second off, it's a learning opportunity. We're not making fun of anybody. We're all just learning at the same speed here. And maybe it's something that you were confused on, and now you're learning about it too.
Um, I guess now I have a question about like when you have students, are they normally like entering your school in kindergarten and moving through the program, or do you have a lot of students who come into your school like in the older like second and third grades? Like,
So we get a lot of ins and outs in our school. When you work with, especially like when I worked in Reading was constant back and forth. Like there was a time when I actually had a kid move out and move back, move in, move out 3 times in one school year. That doesn't happen so much in Antietam, but there are a lot of kids that come in and out. Beginning of the year, well, actually, in about a month, we're going to have kindergarten registration. And when the parents come in, they have to fill out a home language survey. And while they're filling that out, the secretary is looking it over. Secretary happens to be my mother-in-law, too, by the way. She's looking that over and she's looking to see if they checked no in any of the spots concerning the different language questions that they have. And as soon as she sees those, she hands those to me. I then have a quick talk with the parents and just ask them, do you think that your child would need some ESL services or is it a different case? Like a lot of the times the parents will say, oh no, I just marked down that they hear another language because when we go visit grandma only speak English. So I can get a lot of information from the parents there. Parents that do want their kids tested, I test the kindergartners in September. It's a test that takes about an hour, and then based off of the results, I'll call home talk to the parents and say, here's what I see. Tell me what you're seeing at home. Do you think that, your child would benefit from this program? And in this past year, I did receive four kids who came from out of country, who I did need to test that were in second and third grade. So there are screener tests for those kids that I can do. And then same thing that I do with the kindergartners. I'll call up their parents and just say, what do you think? Would they benefit? And most of the time, the parents are like, yes, please put them in because the more exposure they get to the English language, the better.
All right. So I guess you just did also cover, I was gonna ask kind of how your school works with you to support ELLs, and that kind of covers that, but I want to know if you have anything else that you wanted to mention or
I have an amazing principal and an amazing superintendent. And when you get that combination, um, basically they're amazing because if I ask them to try something new, or I think we should maybe try doing something a little bit different, they're always saying, yes, give that a shot. See how it works. And if it fails, there's no like consequences or anything. It's just, again, a learning experience for me. But they kind of let me run the show as far as ESL goes. We have in our district, we only have three ESL teachers. There's the K through three, which is me. There's a 4 through 8, and then a 9 through 12. So when it comes to us, we're a bit smaller than a lot of the other school districts, and because of that, they kind of let us do our own thing as long as we're still hitting the ESL or ELL standards that are in the WIDA framework.
all right. And then we talked about the school, so then I also want to know about how like families are included and how working with families is as an ELL teacher.
So I've only been done this for 2 years, and last year was kind of like, being in the middle of a tornado. Like, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to get my bearings here. This year we started off, the three ESL teachers. We met with our supervisor, and one of the things that we really wanted to do was have like a community culture night where everybody comes in. We're celebrating different cultures. Kind of, to bring the community together. But, with, I'll just say ICE coming into our area, it makes it very, very difficult. And right now, parents don't attend, especially if they're newly immigrated to our district or our area. A lot of them don't attend because, out of fear. That's all it comes down to. But when they do show up, they love speaking to us. They love talking to us. They love asking questions about what they can do at home. We always tell them, you're always welcome to volunteer. You're always welcome to come into the school. But I think sometimes, besides the problem with ICE, I think also if the parents don't speak English, I think they have like a fear of almost embarrassment when they would come in and not understand what's going on. And I think that kind of holds them back a little bit from coming in.
I'm curious how you use if you use like technology in your classroom to like help bridge a gap in any way.
Okay. Yes, we do use a lot of technology. Actually, right now with second graders, they're doing a research project on animals. We just read a story about how an owl was hunting for its food, but all the food that it was hunting for somehow camouflaged itself in the woods where it was living. So then I pulled up a Nat Geo website and chose four different animals that they could research. They bring in their iPads to my classroom. They're doing all the swiping, they're doing all the research, looking everything up. And then they'll eventually do their writing, which I then turn into a typing session. We also use it for, I love the website Blookit. It's kind of like Kahoot, but I use that then to help practice with our phonics skills or our vocabulary words. So whatever pictures I'm using with my vocabulary words for that week, I'll put that picture as kind of like the question, like what vocabulary word is this describing? And then give them four different choices. It helps them obviously with retention. I'll also even like create sentences with a blank spot in the middle of them, and then you have to choose the correct vocabulary word. So that right there is about all that I do. I know the high school and the intermediate school teachers use it a lot more, but with kindergarten, basically kindergarten through second, they're a little iffy with technology. Third graders, that's where it's kind of exploding right now.
Yeah, I definitely like Blue and I know that uh, the beginning is probably like the most stressful part because you have to like pick your animal before
Yeah,
everyone else
yeah.
does. Yeah.
Yeah, they get
Um,
a 30-second buffer zone there where you get to
yeah.
choose your animal. Mr. K, stop, stop, I'm not ready. Sorry, you had 30 seconds. Click.
Yes. Um, and then what kind of professional development does your school do with English language learning? Do they
None.
do anything? Okay.
None. I've actually talked to my principal about, beginning of the year, maybe I can present something to the staff. But right now, um, our elementary school, we're in four modular trailers, and it makes it really hard for us to have any kind of faculty meetings that we used to have. Um, but like I said, then I do want to try and do something with the teachers so that they know what I'm doing in the classroom, how they can support it in their classroom, and vice versa. And even kind of show them like some small tips on, hey, here's a different way to present vocabulary words, or here's how your English language learner is understanding the phonics right now because of their native language. Maybe you need to make a connection this way so that they're learning how to speak in English.
So now I'm kind of most excited about this part because I'm going to ask a little bit about like advice. So the first thing, okay, I'm sorry if any of these are hard to answer. I know this one is like a hard one, but like what is the most important thing to keep in mind when working with ELL students, maybe as a general educator?
I, especially if I get a newcomer, I try and put myself in their situation. If my family had to move to the Dominican Republic tomorrow, I'd struggle because I speak a little bit of Spanish. I understand more than I speak. So I try and put myself in their shoes and understand the struggle that they're having. And I mean, the biggest asset you can have as an ELL teacher is just be patient. Um, like I said earlier, with regular ed students, I tried to zip through all of my lessons. You have questions, I'm going to answer. We're going to have conversations. I have to slow everything down when it comes to these students, because they're making the connection with their native language to a new language, and then they're trying to process everything that's going through. A regular ed student could do that in a second, triple or quadruple that time for an ESL student because of the translanguaging that goes through.
All right. And then I'm wondering if there are any more like struggles or like, I guess to frame it in a more positive way, like things to keep in mind to support ELLs other than like what we've already talked about.
So one of the biggest struggles that I'm having right now with my new student from Yemen is trying to help her make friends. When even with another student, like I received a student in October from Puerto Rico who only speaks Spanish. If there's very limited or no English, the kids kind of shy away from that kid because they're like, how can I communicate with them? So that's a major struggle. So what we did this year is we used little machines. They're a little bit smaller than a cell phone, but they're called Pocket Talks. And the kid will hold the button, speak in their native language, and when they release it, it'll translate everything into English, and then you could do it vice versa. So we have a couple of those that I passed out to the kids who are still, really at the basic beginning of English language. And that sort of has been helping out. But the kids that, the newcomers are still a little bit shy themselves because they see everybody else talking to each other and smiling and understanding, and it's still a struggle for them. So, kind of like we said with the parents, the kids get a little bit embarrassed and they don't want to put themselves out there and have that fear of rejection come back at them.
I'm happy you brought that up. That's actually what my group is planning to do as like a little mini project because I'm doing my project for honors on social emotional learning. So we're doing a small project on like relationship building for newcomer ELLs. So it's good to hear your perspective. Um, I'm wondering what steps college students could take, or maybe like what you wish you had known in college to prepare you to work with English language learners.
Oh, that's a good one. Um, Again, be patient with them, and I think I've had to gently remind some of our classroom teachers that, just because they speak a different language doesn't mean the child's not intelligent. They just have intelligence in a different language, which can transfer over to English as soon as we make those connections. So if you have, like, I have a paraprofessional in my room. Her name's Jillian. Jillian speaks Spanish because she came from the Dominican Republic. She was actually an ELL student herself when she came over to America. Um, if you can have somebody help you with some of those students and translating back and forth, it does kind of help the classroom teacher then realize, okay, it is just a different language, but there's, the comprehension in reading or the structures of writing or even things in math, these are all things that are the same. We got to be a little bit more patient with them because they're translanguaging right now.
All right. And I want to ask lots more questions, but I also forgot to mention that there is 40-minute limit on Zoom for the free version. So I think I'm gonna just ask one more question so that
Okay.
you don't get like cut off or anything. So hmm, I guess something that's important for me as a teacher is how how to create a welcoming classroom environment for ELLs. And this, you can repeat what you said if you want. I understand that they're kind of combined, but you know.
Well, building relationships has always been my strength, regardless of what I'm teaching. But I had to do some, like the summer that I got hired as an ELL teacher, I had to do some research on, the different backgrounds of cultures and how they greet each other, how they don't look directly into your eyes, or they use their hands. And I kind of respect the culture. Not kind of. I respect the culture because I want them to feel welcome. And I know that they're trying to learn the American ways because they live here now and they want to seem like everybody else, but they also want to hold on to their culture too. So case in point, the girl from Yemen, you're not supposed to shake a woman's hand in Yemen. You have to wait for like she has to actually reach out and and offer her hand first before you do that. So when I see this girl every morning, I just have my hands in my pockets and I'll say, "Good morning." I'll say her name, "Good morning. Do you want a hug? Do you want a handshake? Do you want a high five?" And some days she'll say she wants everything, and some days she'll just put her head down and keep walking. So learning how different countries have their different, whatever word I'm looking for, um, that plays in big time because then they go home and tell their parents, "Hey, wow, this teacher, he understands what's going on in our culture." Then when the parents come in and meet me, like there's no fear, there's no hesitancy on what's going on. They already feel welcomed. The parents feel welcome. They feel like it's a safe zone for them and their students or their child.
All right. Well, thank you for answering
Sure.
my questions. They were very helpful,
I hope
and I
so. I
appreciate
usually sound
the.
like a moron, so
I'm also excited because this is kind of a unique opportunity since I'll be going to Antietam, and so I'm excited to like connect what I've learned to being in the classroom and stuff like that.
So are you regular ed with ELL on the side,
No,
or you're just straight up
no.
ELL?
We all take this ELL class with our lit block, which is really helpful because the concepts are very similar, but they're like specialized in our ELL class. And
Sure.
it's really great because like a lot of the terms that you used, I know. And so it's good also that Kutztown has like the requirement to take the class.
Yeah,
I really like the class and yeah.
good. Well, when you come to Antietam, you're very welcome to come into my classroom anytime.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one.
Bye bye.